Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged.
Welcome to Lattes and Leaders, and we have a wonderful special guest with us today, Dr. Zandra Jo Galván. I have been looking forward to having you on. I know we've worked on some scheduling issues and stuff, but I appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Brad. It's just an honor and a privilege to be in this space with you, someone who I absolutely admire for the work that you're doing to uplift others around the world.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. So I've followed you too. I love your message. So just share with us for a few minutes about your educational journey. What's brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I'm super fortunate to be the superintendent of a beautiful school district called Greenfield Union School District in the Salinas Valley in Monterey County, California, and been doing this job for 8 years now. But my journey started as a little girl in these classrooms that I now get to lead. And so I started kindergarten here and I promoted from 8th grade in this school district before I went to the high school in the neighboring town. But my journey started here with beautiful people that shaped me, wanted to do something to me to help me continue to inspire and want to do some really great things for people. And so started here. When I was a 5th grader, I was 10 years old. My big sister, I'm the baby of 6. My big sister became a school teacher, and she became a kindergarten teacher on the same campus that I was a 10-year-old 5th grader. And so it was magic. Teaching came to life for me. I used to sneak over there when most kids would want to run around at lunch. I'd sneak over to her classroom and read books to kids. When I was only 10, I was reading books to 5-year-olds. And so that's when it all just clicked for me and inspired me to want to do something for people and kids. And then one other thing about my journey, I'm incredibly blessed. I'm a family girl. Baby of 6, as I mentioned, my mom and dad raised us to be just really good people. Oftentimes, I'm a Latina, I'm Mexican American, but oftentimes people think I might be a Catholic, but I'm not. I'm a First Southern Baptist.
Okay.
I'm a First Southern Baptist out of West Texas. The Bible Belt is where my parents grew up and my big brothers and sisters. And so also through just faith and living a good life and parents who shaped me have really created, by design, this woman that's here on this podcast with you, and just really a giver, an empathetic leader, someone who treats others with kindness and leads every day with that kind of inspirational thanks be to God and thanks to the people who allow us to live this work and lead this very important work for kids in my district.
Absolutely. And it radiates through. Like I said, I really enjoy all your posts are always so uplifting. And so I look forward to that. And I always say that social media is full of so much bad things that it's nice to be able to connect with the good things and seek out that inspiration and people that are like-minded to be supportive. So I think that's so important. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So in your journey, what led you to kind of make that transition from teacher to more of an administrative type role? Because I won't say leadership, because we know teachers are leaders, and that's something that I truly believe. But to make that transition, what was there a moment or a person, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so kind of a silly story I would probably have to share, but a good one in that sense. So first of all, I'm the baby of 6. I mentioned that already. And any of our listeners who are babies of the family are a little extra. Are you the baby, Brad?
No, I'm the middle.
Okay, you're the middle. But the babies of the family are a little extra. The rules are made for us. The rules are really made for us to, stay contained and not get the family in trouble and, all the other things that come with us, right? And so with that, I was in seventh grade. I was only 12 years old, and I was in a classroom here in Greenfield, across the street from my office now. And I was in a seventh grade science class with a pretty awesome guy named Mr. Schmidt, who was my teacher. And one day, we were getting into it in a lesson, and he was going back and forth. He liked to tease us, and so he did. And so at that point, I said, "You know what, Mr. Schmidt, who's your boss?" He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Who's your boss? Who do you answer to?" He said, "The building principal." I said, "Okay, no. Who's higher than that?" And he said, "Well, that's be the superintendent." I go, "Anybody higher than that?" He goes, "No, that's about, the boss of the district." I said, "Okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be that." And so at 12 years old, I found out from him that the superintendent ran everything in the district. And I came back 2 years too late. He had retired 2 years before I got back here as a superintendent. But we laugh about that story because as a young kid, when you have these wonderful people around you that surround you with love and encourage you, as a baby, I was encouraged by 5 older brothers and sisters that wanted to make sure that Zanny, that's what they call me, Zanny, stayed in line, followed the rules, did what she needed to do, went to college, came out of college, got a great job as a teacher, and just moved up the chain. But then also people like Mr. Schmidt and other teachers, see something in kids at an early age, and they just continue to support us and encourage us to do those kinds of things. And so I would say teachers are just amazing people who give us love and life and are the creators of every single profession in this world, right? So I would attribute it to every single teacher in my journey that saw something in me and continued to shine my light and uplift me as a person. And then I'll also share that my family, my mom and dad, my dad is 92 today. He lives a few doors down.
Oh,
Yes. And I see him, every day on the way home. I stop by and give him a hug and a kiss. And then my mom passed 2 years ago, just last month, and I miss her every day. But one thing that she did teach me is she taught me tenacity. She taught me to love people through just church and giving and just to be the woman I am today. And I'm living on her legacy through the work that I get to do. And so incredibly grateful to those kind of groups of people that really encouraged me to be who I am today.
yeah, and that's funny when you mentioned your father. I've often see the pictures that you post, and that's just
Yes.
so cool that you do that. He may not like it, I don't know, but I think it's awesome that you do that.
Yeah, he doesn't like it when I give him weights. Like I'll push him on Sundays to go down to the local restaurant to eat, but Dad, you're gonna have to lift weights all the way there. He's like, oh man, that's a part he definitely doesn't like, but he does it anyways because I'm the baby and he listens to the baby.
That's right. But I think you made a good point that when you come from a family that's supportive, it gives you a leg up to do more, to have the confidence because you have that support from home and people that believe in you.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important for teachers too. My motto thing is that education is relationship, and because a lot of students don't necessarily get that at home, and so I think it's so important for teachers to remember that. And even if they do get it at home, just like you and I, all that does is adds to it even more when we have those teachers that are like that. And so I think it's just so important for teachers to remember that, and for even leaders to remember that we're pouring into a human, and we always need to keep that in mind, that they're humans first. For administrators, I'm like, your teachers are human first, and for teachers, the students are human first. And when we do that, hopefully we'll give them the support they need. And like you said, just see things in people and encourage them and to bring out their best. So that's a great perspective that you had, and I can see why that definitely helped create the person that you are today. So
Yeah.
that's a wonderful story.
So very true. So very true. And I do believe that any conversation can change, the trajectory of a person's life, in so many ways. And so I'm just really grateful for what you got to experience. I'm sure you have your stories to share and what I got to experience because we're truly grateful for the people in our lives that, saw something in us.
One of the things that a lot of times I get pushed back from people when I talk about relationships, because they think I'm just talking about the warm and the fuzzies, but I'm like, no, relationships can be hard, and they can be, you have high expectations. And, our parents weren't just nice to us. I mean, they had expectations. They,
Yeah.
wanted us to be successful. So, and it's the same way with teachers. Some people, when they think back on certain teachers that inspired them, it's because they were kind of tough on them. They did have a high expectation of them and pushed them to do more because they knew they could. And so those are the important parts of relationship too. And like you said, when you come from a home like that and then have teachers that are like that, it really does set you
Mhm.
up to be successful. So I appreciate,
Yeah.
I love that you were able to share that.
So very true.
When you think about where you've come from to where you're at, and thinking about your leadership role, or even before superintendent, but just moving up through the ranks in different leadership levels, what do you feel like is your maybe one or two key traits or characteristics that have helped you be most successful as a leader?
Oh, wow. So I would say, as far as things that have helped me, I would say for sure, number one is family, of course, and I mentioned that already before. But in order for us to do this work and to give it the attention it deserves, we definitely have to have people that are a supportive network at home. And so I'm very fortunate to have, family, siblings that live locally. I have a husband who's now retired 5 years with law enforcement out here, and so he takes care of the home. And in the morning we both take turns kind of taking the kids to school, picking them up, and those kinds of things. But he definitely is my home structure that allows me to live out my dreams as a leader, and do the things that I continue to aspire to do. So I'm really grateful for the family network. So that's first and foremost. The second one is another network that I belong to that we just kind of co-created ourselves, and that's like sister circle networks. And I have a few that I belong to, but I'll talk about the very first one that was created. And it was back in 2020, when we went out for the pandemic and the world shut down, and we were so uncertain about what we were going to do, and what was going to be next and how long. Everybody had said 2 weeks and we'll be back, and then 2 years later we were still experiencing things. You remember that on Friday the 13th, March 13th? I remember it fondly because I was sitting in this seat at the time, um, when we had to quickly get the message out that we weren't going to come back to school on Monday, and we didn't know when we were going to come back to school. So in that time, there was a conference that shifted quickly to Zoom. It was an in-person conference for women in leadership out here in California by our state organization for administrator called ACSA, the Association of California School Administrators. And so it quickly shifted to Zoom. And so we went on Zoom for the first time. Hundreds of women met on this conference right as it had hit. I think it was maybe a month later, and we had different speakers that were in Zoom rooms, and we went into those rooms and we had conversations around topics of women in leadership. And there was a presenter that talked about sister circles and sisterhood, and how when times get tough, you need to lean in on trusting relationships with other females. And again, this conference was all for females already. And so one of my good high school friends was in that session. I was in a different session at the time, and she immediately took that to heart and said, absolutely, let's start. She wanted to be the nucleus that started a sister circle. And so she then reached out to a few of us that she trusted to bring us together. And we didn't get together in person until like a year later. It was all just text messages and supporting each other. And so she was the nucleus. That was Pam, who was a director at the time running an organization. I was already a superintendent. And then we had like five other friends that were two principals, another superintendent, another director. And so she just reached out to us individually and brought us together. So it just took one person, as the core to create a ripple effect where now these six people were now connected. And all we did is we introduced ourselves over text message, and then we started leaning in and sharing stories and what we needed and what was going well and things that were going wrong. And we still text every single day to this day.
Oh, wow.
And we're now 4 years later. But we, like, if I got like if we did renewal of our vows or, any type of special, they would all be my bridesmaids because they are so important in my life, now. And so we lean on each other. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is the second part that's so integral is a network of female leaders. If you're a female leadership, if you're a man, some compadres or compas, that you can bring together. But everyone needs someone that's in this work that understands the demands of this work so that when times get tough, you can lean in. When times are great, you get to celebrate. But that is probably a group of people that are so important in my life that I'm able to share things that I might not be able to share with everyone, but they quickly respond and provide support or advice or letters of recommendation. Many of the group have moved on to different jobs, and we've all written letters of recommendation for each other and advocated for each other in new roles. And there's been divorces, deaths in the family, all kinds of things that we've dealt with together, but we did it all together through the lens of sisterhood. So that's the second group I would say. And then the third group I would say is my network of brother and sister soups. I hang out with just superintendents because no one knows this work other than another superintendent. When you answer to a board, 5, 7, 9 bosses that all come from different facets, of the sector that aren't necessarily educators at all, that are all wanting you to do something, you need other people that are dealing with the same thing to be able to understand and to be able to say the things that you need to say to be able to move forward as an organization. And so that's my third group that I hang out with often through text messages, through convenings, to be able to just help support each other in that sense. And those are my brothers and my sister soups, and they're all across this nation. And if any of them are listening, I give thanks every day to have them because, like I said, no one else knows the role until you're sitting in the seat and what you're faced with and what you have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah. And especially the tough things, I think,
Yeah,
because
for
one of the things that I believe and say is that, leadership isn't really tested till there's a storm. And that's when you really, whatever that storm is, that your leadership is tried, it's tested. And that's so true. And you have to face things that, most people wouldn't think about.
hmm
Especially now, you think across the country, just all the things people want to add or take away, and everybody has agendas, and just the political nature of it is just, regardless of what you believe, it's always an issue. And so you have to try and temper and balance all of that. So that is a tough work that people probably don't appreciate, like you said, because they don't really fully understand what all that you do. And so, yeah, I'm like you. I think every superintendent for what they do and for, and it's, we always talk about teacher turnover, but administrator turnover and especially superintendent turnover, you being there 8 years is really a rarity. I think the
Yeah,
average, we call it life expectancy, but it's job professional, but it's about 2 to 3 years for the average superintendent. So that is a lot of pressure to do a lot in a short amount of time to try and prove your effectiveness. So
that
that
is
that
so
is
true.
definitely high stress. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I will just add to that. You're absolutely right. That is about our shelf life is 2 to 3 years. And so um, being able to withstand that, there is something to be said about just tenacity and working directly with your school board to understand and have that common vision. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation about relationships, and people say, well, what do you mean when you say relationships? They don't really know what that means. And so for me, relationships is the core of this work. And I will share, when I say relationships, it's about stopping and pausing and talking to community members, stopping and pausing and listening to a parent who's upset about something or has an idea, stopping and pausing when I walk into a classroom and asking the teacher how they're doing and how their family is before I move into what's this lesson about. It's stopping and pausing on the playground to say, hey, kindergartner, I'll race you on the tricycle and I bet I'm going to beat you. And then we do it and then we celebrate whoever won at the end, right? So that's what relationships is to me. It's truly giving your full self to the person on the receiving end and listening to them just as much as you give to them. And as you leave that conversation, leaving richer because you had that exchange is where really, when I say relationships means to me. And so all that is so important to this work as a superintendent. And I will share also within the superintendency, it is tough. It's a tough job that nobody really understands the demands that we face. But I think through conversations and sharing, stories like this with listeners or others, it is an achievable, attainable position for others to absolutely have. And in a time where we're losing so many for various reasons, it's the perfect opportunity also for others to say, I can do that. Let me talk to someone who's an encourager that can help support me. And I do that work through ASA. I'm a mentor for aspiring female superintendents and aspiring Latina superintendents. And I get to meet with them on a monthly basis, and I coach and mentor others to know that they can. When it is seen as one of those positions that's very, very tough, it's also an incredibly gratifying and an incredible position to be in. I truly, even on my worst day, still love this job. I love it because you have the power to support people and to bring in programs that are going to allow students to achieve and to connect people in ways that no other position really gets to do when you're pretty much the top level, of the food chain with a respect that work with your board to be able to outline those. And so I don't want anybody out there to think it's not something that they can do. They absolutely can. And you don't have to know everything either when you sign up for the job. I had never been a superintendent before this one, and 8 years in, I'm doing okay, still being able to live the dream and take care of people. But I did that not by myself. I had mentors, I had sister superintendents, I had brother soups that were a phone call away and a text message away to give me advice, to make sure that the decisions that were made were in the best interest of everyone in the district. So it is tough, but it is also very gratifying.
Yeah. And I love the point that you talk about mentoring others. And I think in any leadership role, it's so important to bring people with you. And, I always say a gauge of a leader is how many other people that you develop into leaders to find their strengths and help them develop them to be their best. So you're absolutely right. I think that, really does reflect, your heart for the work too. So I think
Yes.
that's a powerful thing. You talked about when you see parents and different things. So to the community, you kind of are the face of the school system. How do you, because we always talk about building community and, interacting with the community. How do you do that? How do you bring the community in and really connect it with the schools?
Yeah. So for community, and, we have different opportunities to engage and empower the parent community as well as community agencies. So I'll share just a few things that we do here that really allow us to build trust within different sectors that, our connectors with. And so first is our parent cafes, our parent academies, and our parent universities are opportunities for us to engage at all the schools, but also at the district level in ways that are topics that our parents and our community want to know more about. So, for example, we have counselors at every school, and we have social workers. And so our social workers are, new to the system post pandemic. And so what we've done is we've created presentations for all of our schools, and we bring parents together on Friday mornings when they drop off the kids, they come, or on an evening during the week where we invite them on our campuses to be our partners in education. And then we tell them all about that job and how they can engage. And if they're noticing signs with their student that are not necessarily, optimal, or they're showing different types of behaviors, how can we help you to understand adolescence and what kids go through and like their middle school years that are very different from elementary. So we'll do things like that. I'm also very proud that every single year, every single child goes and visits a college or a university because we build that into the budget. And so every year, someone different is going, every child, different university or college every single year. So by the time they, leave us, they've visited, anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 universities. And now we've planted that seed that anything's possible
Mm.
for your child. And our parents go with us on those trips that are on the weekend. They don't necessarily go during the week, but if we also take our parents to universities on Saturdays, our parents are invited to go with us. And so the student and the family go to visit a college or a university. And so they also see college and university as an attainment, and a very strong possible attainment for them. So that's one way, like how we engage parents, and we ask them for topics that they want to hear and what they want to learn more about. And then on the community side, we have community collaboratives, and I started that when I was an assistant superintendent, in another district. But then I brought it here 8 years ago, and every month on a Friday, we invite community partners to come into our school district, and we meet with them and we talk about a featured partner that shares a little bit about what they did. We just had our first one Friday this past week, and the partner that we featured was the Monterey County Behavioral Health. So the Behavioral Health Department talked with all of our partners and our counselors and our family liaisons that are there at these meetings about services, behavioral health types of services, community resources, as much as even the Monterey County Food Bank was, a resource, how to get counseling, how to get social services for your family, how to, reach out to the employment agency if you've lost your job. So we give them a lot of information that keeps them informed about things that matter to them, but then also how they can be a partner with the school district. And that meeting, we had 75 different people there
Wow.
from cross sectors. And it was our first one for the year. And we had, the room was packed with people who wanted to share. And the people in there were the California Highway Patrol was there, the Greenfield Police Department, the Greenfield Fire Department, social services, substance abuse agencies. We also had colleges and universities there. We had the County Office of Education. It was a diverse group of people that showed up to be partners, because a healthy, informed community makes for better economic outcomes as well as educational outcomes. And so those are a couple of, like, through the parents and through the community, that we just engage them and empower them to really share, what's in their heart, what's on their mind, so that we can then, do that heavy work together.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think that's
Yeah.
so important. I think one of the areas maybe that sometimes superintendents kind of struggle is building those connections and building the community and getting the community involved. I think that's so important because, like you said, it benefits the whole community when you do, the whole work structure, workforce, everything. So that's an important piece. I actually spoke with, he was, the Secretary of Education, I think in Rio de Janeiro. And what was interesting, he brought a perspective that I've never heard before. He said that often in education, we don't do a good job of interacting with the community, with the partners and businesses, because we only know how to speak the education language. And I was like, that's a really good point. They don't, because education, we're bad about acronyms and, we kind of have our
Right.
own language. And he said, so, why he felt he was effective at it is he got like an economics degree. So he kind of understood, how to speak their language. And I thought that was interesting, but it really is so important, like you said, to get them on board, to get everybody
Yeah.
together. And it really does, benefit the schools, the students, but it impacts and affects positively the whole community too.
Yeah,
So,
for
and to
sure.
have 75, that's pretty incredible for the first one. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
kudos for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and many of them drove like 45 minutes to get here, because Greenfield, if you look at for us on the map, we're in a rural community in southern Monterey County. And so the largest city is 45 minutes away. And
Mm,
so, like, the majority of those people traveled to get here, but they came because they want to be part of a community that really cares about the children that we serve. And so we were very fortunate to have that many travel from so far for a lunchtime meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So when you think about being a superintendent and the responsibilities and things like that, how do you or do you do a good job of practicing self-care yourself? Because we always tell others and our teachers, but if we don't model it, it's hard to be impactful with the words. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so absolutely. That is a priority, a personal priority, but also a professional priority. Finding ways to incorporate both mental and physical fitness. And I know we often say physical fitness, but mental fitness is also a really important area to talk about. And oftentimes we don't talk about mental fitness. We talk about mental illness,
Illness.
and about that as it's a faux pas, right? To talk about people needing help to think through your thoughts and to have a positive self outlook about yourself and what you're doing. And we go to the medical doctor quickly when we break our leg or our foot, but we don't go to the mental doctor as easily when we're feeling bad about life or a situation that we have in front of us. And so as I've grown and I've matured, you realize the mental fitness is equally as important as the physical fitness in our lives. And so I share that with my community professionally, both via social media and also within my school system. And so I'll share two things. One is we became a Blue Zone school district. And I don't know if your listeners are aware of Blue Zones, but you can search it. It's a National Geographic study. They studied 7 areas throughout the world where people live to be over
Yeah.
100
Yeah.
years old. Yeah. And they adopted certain practices as part of their life, just their life and their day-to-day operations that allowed them to live longer. And they're really cool 9 kind of core values or areas that you can incorporate into your life so easily, but you don't realize they will add years to your life. And so we became a school district that's a Blue Zone approved school district, and all of my schools are Blue Zone approved schools. And I'll just share a couple of things. Like one is having a sense of belonging is one of their core values in the Blue Zones type of mentality. Is when you have a sense of belonging, you have people to turn to. Earlier, I mentioned about sister circles and my sister and brother soups across the world and all of my family. They give me a sense of belonging. I feel that I'm not in this work alone. I feel that I have people I can turn to help me navigate through life and through situations, just as good as anyone. And I don't have to see myself as trekking that alone. I think mental illness happens when we believe we're in this alone and
Mm.
that we are alone to fight whatever we're fighting or endure whatever we're enduring as well. And so that's one of the core values. Another core value is move naturally. Move
Mm.
naturally. You
Mm.
don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to go to have a gym membership and lift weights with all the other people because you don't want to be, whatever. Just move naturally is a core value. We can do that. So this is what I did. Every single one of my schools have 4 beach cruisers, bicycles that I purchased for every school to have available for their teams. So it's not unheard of to have this kindergarten team to get on those bikes and go for a stroll at
Oh,
lunchtime.
nice.
It's not unheard of for, a team of educators at the middle schools to get on that bike and go for a little stroll. So that is something that we gifted a site so that they can move naturally. The other one is blender bikes. I don't know if y'all have heard of blender bikes, but you can put a blender on the front of the bicycle, and it's a stationary bike that we put in the lounges, and people will go get some fruit, throw it in the blender, and you make a smoothie for your lunch by riding the bike
I
while
riding
it
the
blends.
bike.
Yes. And so simple things that we adopted
Love
to
it.
move naturally. So that is on kind of like the Blue Zone side. And then for me personally, I exercise every morning, and I publicly share that, kind of with others, because superintendents, we will, here's the bad, straight down ugly about it. We could be gone tomorrow and we're going to be replaced in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. They'll have the job posted and somebody else will be applying for this job, and I'm gone. And but for your family, when we're gone, that's going to be horrific, right?
Mhm.
And so I think we need to stay healthy in the position so that we can then continue to serve in the capacity that we feel is important. So that balance is so important on my personal side, to exercise in the morning, to move naturally. I don't have a gym membership right now. I do it myself. And I just bought some cheapo weights at the dollar store. I bought, a kettlebell at Ross and Marshall's, and just to do simple movements. You don't have to do crazy things to stay physically and mentally fit. And it's gathering my family and going on a walk, gathering my dad, putting him in
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
wheelchair and say, okay, Dad, let's go. We're rolling down to
Mm.
have some breakfast on Sunday morning. And there we go. Just like moms and dads with the baby carriage, I'm that daughter with the father in the wheelchair running down the side of the road. And I've not seen that before, but now people see me doing it, and I'm modeling it for my community that it's okay. Grab your elderly parent, and hit the street. So
I love it.
wellness is absolutely important, and both professionally, bringing things into your organization, and then also personally for me.
Yeah, I love that. And you made a good point there, like whether you have a gym membership or not. I remember one person was sharing with me, because and you're like this as you move up in leadership roles, you're almost kind of like a workaholic. So
Oh yeah.
you a lot of times you may not. Hopefully you do. It sounds like you are the point where you do, where you make that time. But his point was that it's the little things, really. It's making sure you get 8 hours sleep. It's making sure you eat breakfast. It's making sure you drink water. So it doesn't always have to be extravagant things. Just like you said, the
Mhm.
natural movement. Just you don't have to go to the gym and do spin class. Just walk, or get on a bike and go for a ride with your family or something. So I think those little things do add up. I love
Yeah.
the bike idea. I
Mhm.
was I was fortunate. I got to speak in Malaysia a couple of years ago, and I traveled around. They're called teacher training centers. So teachers would come to this facility and stay there for the weekend or whatever, and we would do classes. But what was neat is they had something that was called a reflexology path. So it's these rocks. It's a path that you can
Mm.
walk on, but it's rocks all different shapes and stuff. And but it was a wellness thing. Is they would get out there and walk on it during breaks. And I went out there and tried it and thought I was going to die because because it's something we don't,
Yeah.
and they made fun. They're like, you Western people don't know what health is. And I was like, you're absolutely right. But it's just rocks and cement, but they're all different shapes sticking up and stuff. And they would walk on it like they were walking on carpet. But
Wow.
I would get on it and it was like shards of glass, to me. So they're like helping me walk and trying to, but it really, made me realize that, how little we do really focus on wellness and health. And, I've never seen a reflexology path anywhere in the US, but that was something really neat. But, but your bikes reminded me of that, just something different, something they can do, hop on at lunch or whatever. And, they don't have to take time out of the evening if you have that
Mhm.
opportunity. So I love that. I love that you
I
put that
love that
thought into
too.
it.
Yeah, and you're right. Like when I'll go get like a foot massage or Chinese medicine type thing, they do a lot with the feet it hurts too for
It
me
hurts.
too, because
Yeah.
I'm not used to that. But stepping on those rocks just hits different points that we don't necessarily study in Western medicine as much as they do, but something to learn from. The other thing I want to just mention to you is meetings, strolling meetings. I've tried to do meetings now with team members. Like I have one-on-ones with each of my executive cabinet members and one-on-ones with my principals, and I will go on a walk with them. And I just say, just let's go for a stroll. And there's an easy way to incorporate moving naturally with people rather than sitting down and having a meeting with someone sitting at a desk, in front of you. I'll say, hey, let's go. And we will walk around the neighborhood for
Nice.
our meeting instead. And so that's just like simple things that just thinking outside the box on how to be able to get movement incorporated into your life. And we do it now, and it's a natural thing. Are we going to sit or are we
Yeah,
going to walk today, boss? Okay, we're going to walk today,
I
So
love it.
little things to incorporate it into your life, but very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that idea too. because it not only are you active and you're moving, but it's just a more informal setting too, which I
Yeah.
find people tend to be more open and dialogue and communicate. So
Yes.
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed you being here today, sharing so much. I love the sister circle. Love the blue zone. I think that's so neat.
Mhm.
So, but I do have one more question before we leave. So, this is called Lattes and Leaders for a reason. But what is your hot beverage of choice?
Oh, gosh. My favorite, well, it's fall. So I probably would say a pumpkin spice
Okay.
latte that I only usually indulge in during the fall time. And so I'll probably say that. My go to is always a flat white, kind of like a nice, good whole milk in there. I'm not a skinny type of latte. If I'm going to go in, I want it to have full flavor. Um, but I will say right now, I have not yet had my pumpkin spice latte for the fall season. So when I do take that first sip, I will think of you, Dr. Brad, and our listeners with lattes and leaders.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would love to have you back on sometime to just
I'd love
share
that.
more and just share more of your wisdom and experience. So, but yeah, thank you for taking the time to be with us today and sharing so much good information.
Thank you so much for having me. And I've enjoyed this time with you just as much. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guests, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.